All right, it looks like everyone's on. I'm going to go ahead and hit record right now, and let's get started.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone who is on the call. Hey, I have a huge, valuable treat for you today. I've got my mentor, and I would venture to say kind of my partner. I actually work at Cross Country Mortgage with Jeremy. I met Jeremy, what was it, man? About 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to be coached by you about 3 years ago. And one of the most impactful semesters that I've ever had in coaching was with you. I've looked up to you for years. And I have the opportunity to have you now kind of share some of the things that you have done to inspire hundreds, if not thousands, of loan officers. And the really great thing about it is you're teaching what you practice every single day. And likewise with me. And so I think today, what I wanted to share a real quick story with everyone on the call, because I think this is really important why we're actually doing this call, why we're here today. It was in November, you and I were at the summit, and we were sitting there, it was the last day, and we were sitting there at the table, and we had to take a core sales test, and it's 20 questions.
Yep.
And if you score below 12, basically it says down at the bottom, like, you should pick a different career, you suck.
Right.
And I think I scored a 7, right? Or an 8. And I felt horrible, and I felt insecure in the moment. And then you're sitting across the table from me, and I'm kind of shaking my head, and you're like, hey, how'd you do? And I said, I'm embarrassed, man. It's a 7. You're like, dude, like, what did you say? You scored, and you're a big dog and put up these huge numbers.
I scored an 8.
An 8. Okay. And I was like, what? And you're like, yeah. And so why don't you share with the group this morning the conversation you had with me at the table and what we've done since then.
Awesome, man. So thank you for having me on. I am super stoked to be here and share with you, because selfishly, it only makes me better, and selflessly, it makes everyone else on this call better, anyone that gets exposed to this. And that's what it's all about to me, is just constantly trying to improve. And that was the conversation that we had. That's the starting point of the conversation, is that we think that we just have everything figured out, and you check something off a box and then it never changes, and you're always doing maybe that activity, right? But the reality is, when we really look at things, we realize that it's really difficult to be good at many things, especially all at the same time. We can have seasons where we really kill how many calls we're supposed to make and exactly what we're supposed to do. We can have seasons where we make sure that we meet 15 people face-to-face every single week. We have seasons where I hit 5 break breads every single week, which is having coffee, food, sharing food with someone in an intimate setting. We have seasons where we hit 60 plus great conversations every single week about real estate, about mortgage, about how we can serve other people and ask for the business. We have seasons where we generate, 10 plus referrals every single week. I could go on and on and on and on. Now, to put that all together every single week forever is very hard, and I don't think I've ever done it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big misconception, is that you just do something and then that's the way it is and it never changes. Everything always changes. And the reality is, success, if you're going to be successful, you're going to fail, like the test that you and I took, Dan. Like, I failed it, right? Like, technically I'm, at the top of this small coaching program that we're involved in from a success standpoint, which is kind of funny, but I am failing the tests, right? And the reason why I'm failing the tests is not because I'm failing in my job or in my life. It's because I actually tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really the fact of the matter, is that we have to be honest with ourselves. When a question is stated, do you do this 100% of the time? Okay, 100%. Jeremy, do you call 40 agents every week 100% of the time? It's not 90%, it's not 70%, it's not 80%. The question is, it's 100. So when I first took the test, I, like many people, have ego, especially subconscious ego. Like, I'm pretty aware, but subconscious ego is real in all of us, and ego is not always a bad thing. You just have to be aware of it. So when I first took the test, my subconscious ego kind of took over. I filled it out quickly, Dan, and I actually scored a 14,
Yeah.
right? And I took a deep breath, and I literally was sitting there, I looked at it, and I went, I'm going to read these questions one more time. And it says, I started reading the words and underlining them. Do you do this every time? Do you talk to this person 100? Do you make these calls 100%? And I just started crossing them out, and I ended up at a 7. Now, here's the beauty, is that made me realize that I am so blessed to have had any type of success, growth in my business that I have, and I'm very, very grateful for it. And I have such a long way to go, and that's the exciting part. So I think it's important to check your barometer, be so honest, but don't have to be negative. You don't have to beat yourself up, right? That's something I talk about even with you a lot. Like we're so self-critical. Like we don't have to be that critical of ourselves. We can actually look at things objectively and go, awesome, this is the gap. This is my gap. How do I close the gap? Not how do I get to the end goal, but how do I close the gap, close the distance between where I am and where I want to be. That only happens with honesty, self-awareness, making sure you're aware of your failures, and then having an accountability partner that can help you out and hold you accountable to closing those little gaps on a weekly basis.
I love when we got back from the summit, you and I committed to having a 5-minute phone call, 10-minute phone call every Friday morning. And what you did, and the purpose of that phone call is, let's pick one thing off that core sales test to work on this week. And we've done that. We vocalized it, and we've held each other accountable to it. And then over the 6-month semester, be able to now say yes. We're doing that every single Monday, or we're doing our best to do it every single Monday, or send the breakthroughs and the meetings. And so that's the other purpose of kind of getting you in front of an audience of incredibly talented loan officers right now, because I want to share the pain that I've gone through with you. And you've seen this as I've come on board in the last year with you. Is I tried to match Jeremy Forcier. I wanted to be like Jeremy Forcier, and I tried so hard, and then I realized that gap is so dang big. And what you've helped me better understand and realize is that you don't have to catch Jeremy, and I'm not going to. I may never, but if I can shorten that gap, I'm going to be more Jeremy Forcier light. And I'm using your name because you're a mentor of mine. Idol is a weird word, but someone in the industry that I want to be like. You're just so well spoken, and you do things with such high integrity and credibility, and you make it look so easy. And so, just like you said, shortening that gap is so important. So out of today's call, my hope is that everyone listening will find one or two nuggets to just shorten that gap between where you're at right now and maybe where you want to be, or whatever you call it, maybe greatness. And I believe that the information you're going to share, you're going to be able to take away a nugget or two. So why don't we just kind of jump in? I love what you've titled today's conversation, and then we'll attach it to 2 forms. And in the comments below, or I'll email this to you after the call, we'll send you that test that Jeremy and I are talking about, and then we'll send you the forms that we're talking about. So you don't have to take a ton of notes, just listen. You can replay this. So Jeremy, why don't you jump into the topic of today's conversation and then the form that we're going to review, and we'll get it cranked out.
You got it. So success is failure, right? I've never accomplished anything worthwhile in my life, number one, alone, on my own, and number two, through it being easy. I've always had some type of failure, some giant speed pump, some tragedy. Failure, period, has always propelled me forward in order to do something that was ultimately great. So that's the context of everything, is that you're never just going to be successful. You're never just going to make a goal and then run right past it. You're always going to have challenges, speed bumps, and failures. And within those failures is where the growth really comes from. Now, this isn't new news, right? This is something that you probably have heard over and over again. But usually if it's new, it ain't true. And if it's old, it's gold. So I always like to focus on principles that are real and that actually work. So let's talk about not accomplishing anything on my own, okay? I always felt like I had to prove something to everybody, okay? And I was a big comparison guy. early on in my life, all the way through probably 35 years old. So that's 5 years ago. Okay. I was always really comparing, and I was always trying to prove to everyone that I could do it on, I didn't need help, right? That I could do it. I can figure it out. And the reality is that mindset caused a lot of unnecessary failure. But through those challenges, I realized that collaboration is key. Having accountability partners is key. Having a team that can serve me is key. Not comparing myself to anyone else is key. I do not compare myself to anyone else. I do look at people with extreme curiosity though, and I do look at people and become inspired by what they do. Whether they do less than me or more than me in my job, it doesn't really matter to me at all anymore. It's not just a bigger pile theory. The bigger pile theory, if you're not familiar with it, is that the person who does more than you just do what they do, period, and you never have any value or ask any questions, right? Listen, that there is lots of truths in that. I love looking up towards people that are crushing it even more than I am. But the reality is becoming extremely curious, okay, about what other people are doing well or what they're saying is also just as valuable. So that's number one, okay, is that you're not going to do it alone. Find an accountability partner. Find someone that you can share your successes and your failures with, whether that's a coach, whether that's Dan, whether that's me, whether it's a good friend, where you're having a quick 5-minute, 15-minute call every single week to go over items. Now, the second thing is that if you really want to get better, okay, and I hate saying this because I don't like bondage, you guys. I don't like being forced or feeling forced to do anything. I am a free spirit at my heart level, and that bleeds over into other areas of my life. So I can appear very messy sometimes, even though people think it's all together. What you need to do is track everything with extreme transparency and honesty. Okay, so for me, I use a form called the Greatness Tracker. Okay, I absolutely love it. I carry it with me wherever I go. It's in my backpack right now because I was home last night. I'll show you guys. I carry around a hot pink clipboard. Okay, so this is a tactic for you guys. If you guys are going to get a clipboard, get a colored one. Okay, the reason why you need to get a colored one is if you leave this thing anywhere, no one's going to take it. Okay, that's number one. And number two, if you leave this somewhere, everyone, you're always going to be able to call and they're going to find it, okay, and have it ready for you. So on my clipboard, I have my calendar printed, okay, for the day for all my appointments. I have what I call a theme day tracker. These are the things that I'm going to do on a daily basis. And then I have my greatness tracker, which we're going to go into right now. Okay, this form right here, this legal form, and you will all get a copy of this, okay? So the greatness tracker is a form that was created by a coaching company, created by Rick Ruby and a coaching company called The Core, which I am a coach in as well as I am a student of. And all it does is track your daily activities, okay? What you're supposed to do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then it breaks it down into measurable metrics. So for example, doing 15 face-to-face appointments every single week, having 5 of those 15 face-to-face appointments be sharing food with someone, breaking bread, right? That causes you to become in deeper relationship with the person that you're sharing food with. 60 great conversations, not great calls, not dials, but talking to 60 plus people about real estate and asking them for the business. 21 hours of prospecting, green time, right? Doing at least 10 gratitude or thank you cards every single week, personally. Making sure that you're sending out 250 videos on a weekly basis. Making sure that you're generating at least 10 referrals, not internet leads, 10 referrals every single week. And then tracking how many deals you got in that week and how many pre-approvals that you completed in that week. Now, when I first started filling out this form, Dan, and for the benefit of everyone on here, the old Jeremy was the one filling it out. So this is 8 years ago, 9 years ago, almost now, 8.5 years ago, I started using this form. And the reality was, because I wanted to win and because I wanted to be number one and I wanted to be liked and I was comparing myself to these other people I was coaching with, I would fluff my forms. Okay. I was a liar on this form, which is ridiculous looking back and to even say out loud. Like for the first 18 months, maybe longer, I would fudge my numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't talk to 60 people, but I think maybe I did. Whenever you say I think, by the way, the answer is no.
Yeah.
You didn't. Okay. I've found that for myself to be true. Whenever I'm like, you know what, I think, that's probably a no. When you think, that means it's in your head. It's made up most likely. And what you're doing is justifying, okay? And it's just conjecture of doing something you didn't do. So for me, I would say, oh, you know what? I called at least 80 people. I'm sure I talked to 60 and I'd write down 60. I met with all these people at a chamber of commerce saying that counts as meeting 15 people. Nah, not really. It's more like, hi, I'm Jeremy. Nice to meet you. And you move on. That's not a 5-minute interaction. I didn't ask for an appointment. I didn't really make any type of connection. I didn't have any follow-up plan. But you know what? I'm going to write it down. I did the activity. I think you get the point. So I did that for 18 months to 2 years, and I had very limited growth, and I was extremely frustrated, right? Because I didn't know why. I didn't know why my results weren't adding up. And what it came down to is that when you do have some type of coach or accountability partner that's trying to help you, which can be anyone, by the way, when you have that and you're not giving real, accurate information, that person can't help you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell all my students this, Dan, that I coach, is that I would much rather you turn in a form that told me that you talked to 21 people in a week rather than write down it was 52 because that's how many calls you made, because I can't coach you on that gap that we were talking about at the beginning of the call, right? We need to figure out where our gaps are, you guys. We need to figure out exactly where our gaps are so we can just improve those gaps, not to be perfect, but to be happy and celebrate these failures, because we can come up with a game plan of exactly how to execute and get better and close those gaps. That's where the success lies. It does not lie in the checking off the box. It lies in the failures and what happened and how that conversation goes.
Well, the failure is you're supposed to do 60 and you maybe only logged 30, but you had 30 great phone calls versus 68, and I'm guilty of this, 68 phone calls versus 30 good conversations, right? And so That's been my bigger aha as of late, where I'm actually writing down, and coach me on this, because we haven't coached really on this, but I'll write down in each box every call that I make, because I'll leave a good voicemail, but I'll circle them if we had a great conversation. Is that something that has merit? And then you count the circles?
I think that's great. I do something very, very similar. Like if you see on, this form that I shared, in the Monday column, I had like 20 names written down. And then I have check marks next to the ones that I interacted with.
Okay.
Right. That I talked to. You have to figure out how to play a game and do tricks like what you're sharing, Dan. Like I'm going to write down all the calls I made so I can visually see it. And it will force me to do it if I write all their names down, and I'm going to call all these people. And then accountability, right? Check marks, circles. Like I like circles for when I ask for a referral. That's something I do.
Okay. Well,
so I like the visual of a check mark if I talk to the person or they responded to me, because that counts. Let's not forget. If someone calls you back and leaves you a message or texts you back, they're interacting with you, right? But it can't just be a dial. Like I called them and nothing, right? So I'll put check marks next to the interactions, and then I will circle when I ask for a referral. Because the biggest gap that I see, Dan, about high producers, okay, lots of other people that I coach, even myself, I'm guilty of it, because once again, I don't do it every time. Yeah. I wish I did, but we're guilty of not asking for the business, okay? And I think people that are struggling struggle with it, and I think people that are successful struggle with it, okay? For different reasons, but they're both ego-centric, okay? People that struggle asking for the business when they're struggling feel like they're not worthy, okay? They have a self-worth issue, right? Most of the time, people that are experiencing success or they're killing it, the reason why they struggle with it is because their ego says, I've earned it already.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same but opposite end of the spectrum. And we just expect to get, because we put in the work, we've made the call, why do I have to ask over and over again? Right? Like, am I not worthy? So it's the same thing, just flipped a little bit on people that struggle and people that don't. So that's the number one thing that I coach on right now, Dan. And I know I'm not currently coaching you, but that's the number one thing that I see when I see giant greatness trackers with 60 plus conversations, but I only see 9 leads. I literally call bullshit every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say, hey, I'm not saying you're lying. What I am saying is that either number one, you're lying, which I'm not assuming. Number two, you literally have horrible closing skills, which is great. Let's celebrate it, because we can work on closing scripts, right? That can fix that. Or number three, you're just not asking for the business. Yeah. Which one of those three is it, right? That's how you coach on gaps. That's how you get better, is by having real information you can work from, become self-aware about it, and then make a really simple plan. Like, I'm going to circle every time I ask for a referral so that you can see, here's how many people I asked this week. Here was my net result. Oh, it's 30% better. Shocker. I asked 10 people for referrals. I got 3 extra leads that week. So I think that's really important for everyone to know, is that tracking is critical. Being self-aware is critical. Not lying to yourself is critical. And then having someone that can help you, see your blind spots and coach you to your gaps is absolutely critical.
That's money. So a couple of questions have come in, and I took the notes. So I'm going to start doing that today. I'm going to start putting check marks next to names that I had conversations with, and I'm going to circle them when we have a referral-based conversation.
Right.
That's awesome, man. All right. So the first question is, okay, these are a lot of calls, 60 calls. So I think the person that asked might be a little bit confused. It's not 60 calls in one day. The greatness tracker is 1 week. Okay.
That is correct.
But 60 calls is still a lot. Are those all, the question is, are these all cold calls? What kind of calls are these? And I think you have a form on that clipboard, which will help better explain that, and I'll send it out to everyone too. But what kind of calls are these, Jeremy?
Sure. So I work from themed days. Once again, I fail at this every week in some way, shape, or form. Okay. But the theme days keep me on track, at least with who I am supposed to be calling. So before I answer that specific question, Dan, I want to give people context, because this isn't something that happens overnight, you guys.
Yeah.
This isn't something that you're going to get and you're just going to rip starting day one. Like, I still struggle with it, and I've been doing it for 8 years. It's supposed to be hard. So I want to give you all context, that I don't want you to get it and go, oh, this was too hard. There's no way anyone can, I can't do this, right? That you're not supposed to be able to complete it, by the way. Like, that's the point, is that it's supposed to be extremely, extremely difficult to complete. So that's that context. Second context, as I answer this, is that you're going to start wherever you are. You might not have some of these things in place that I'm going to talk about, AKA a top 50 past client list or a VIP list. These are things that you're going to create. So I'm going to share with you what I do, but I will tell you that if you're new in the business, and I define new in the business as either the last 2 years, brand new, or the last 20 years in the business, but you redefine yourself every single year and you've had no plan ever, you're new in the business, in my opinion, still. Okay. So if you're new in the business, you're going to have to create some of this stuff, and it's okay to call 60 people, period. I'm going to go through what I call, but any type of calls. And I've proved this theory over and over. Quick story, I was in the airport, okay, with a gentleman named Brad who works for me, okay? And I love Brad. He's awesome. He's been in the business for a few years, and he's doing great. He's only been a retail loan officer for the last 2.5 years, and he's having success. I mean, he closed 50 loans in his first full year in retail, and he did great, right? And he's going to, looks like he's going to do like 22 million this year. We're only in February for what he's pacing. He's doing great, okay? But we were talking about these activity trackers in the airport together, and he was like, man, I just don't get it. Like, you say call anyone because I don't have all these lists. He's like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, who am I supposed to call and say, hey, can I have a deal? And I proved to him in real time. There was a gentleman sitting right in front of me. And I said, hey, you want me to show you how to do it? He said, sure. So I said, hey, what's up, man? He goes, oh, hey, how are you? I don't even know how old. It's probably like in his mid-20s or something like that. I go, I'm Jeremy, introduced myself. I said, hey, let me ask you a question. Do you rent or do you own a house? And he was like, I rent. My mom and dad own though. And I go, oh, that's cool, man. So where do they live? He told me where they lived. And I said, do they have a mortgage? He was like, yeah. And I go, man, do you think that they would be interested and have value in doing a mortgage checkup to see if I could save them hundreds of thousands of dollars for free? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be. I go, hey, well, thank you so much, man. I was just proving a point here to my buddy. And I just left it at that. And my buddy Brad was like, bro, only you can do that. And I said, that's the lie. That's the lie.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
We can do that with anyone, you guys. We can do that with strangers. We can do that with people we know. We just choose not to. Okay. So there's my context as I go through this. Whether you have these things set up or not, it doesn't matter. But let me make it a little easier for you. Okay. So on a weekly basis, we want to call at least 40 realtors a week. Okay, 40 realtors a week. I try to do that on Mondays. Okay. So for example, this past Monday, I called, does that look like 40, Dan?
Negative.
No, because I didn't get to it. Okay. And I'll explain why at the end. Okay. But I call real estate agents on Mondays. Now, don't take this so literal and go, well, I can't call realtors on any other day. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. Yep. But my theme on Mondays to try to get a jump start on the week is to call 40 realtors that I'm in relationship with or that I want to be in a relationship with. Okay. On Tuesdays, it's pipeline status updates. So that is any live transaction that I have going on where we're calling for purchases, the buying agent, the listing agent, and the borrower with an update of exactly where we are. Okay. Easy way to get connections and call about real estate.
3 calls.
Right? It's 3 calls on a purchase. On a refi, it's 1 call, right? So if you got a bunch of refis, that's going to be 1 call. If you have purchases, that's automatically 3 calls. If you talk to a third of them and you have 8 purchases going at some point in time, that's 24 calls divided by 3 that's 8 conversations right there. Okay, if you just
let me jump in real quick. I want to share something that you taught me. This was a couple of years ago because I wasn't hitting the numbers, the 60 calls. One of the things you told me on my Tuesday update calls was when you call a listing agent, say, hey, I'm managing the financing on your listing on 123 Maple Street. I need you to call me back. Here's my number. And they will call you back because you're managing the financing. And when they call you back, there's your great call. So that's something that I've been doing lately because I'm trying to be more truthful on my greatness tracker as well. And the theme for this year, and I produced a video on this to loan officers about 3 weeks ago, is right now we should be focusing on our database and listing agents for new business, right? And so that's a great way to, one, ace a phone call, add it to your greatness tracker, but then build a new relationship. So I just wanted to share that real quick because it's kind of a hack to the greatness tracker.
It's an excellent hack. I got all kinds of hacks for it because as you get busier and busier, you need to find ways to be more impactful in less time.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason I told Dan to do that, by the way, and I still do that, is that the listing agent is going to think something is wrong. Okay. So I didn't say there was anything wrong in the voicemail, but they instantly go to something's wrong with the financing. This isn't going to close. They're going to want to talk to you. And then they're relieved when you're not sharing something that is wrong. You're just giving them an update. Okay. So that's a great tactic. So that's Tuesdays or status update calls. Wednesdays are pre-approvals. So that doesn't mean I'm doing my pre-approvals on Wednesday. That means I am trying to call everyone that we have pre-approved in the last 60 days, the last 2 months. I'm trying to call those people on Wednesdays. Okay. And if you don't have enough to call from the last 2 months, you can go back a year. You can go back as long as you want. But calling people that didn't buy a house, who raised their hand, took a loan application, qualified for something, anything, staying in touch with those people. So we're supposed to call however many we can in the last 60 days. You can go further back if you want. Just book 2 hours to do that. It is very, 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 very effective. Okay. On Thursdays, it's top 50 past clients. Okay. So this would require you to create a list. If you don't have a list, just call 12 past clients. Just 12 past clients every single Thursday to connect with them, etc. I haven't done this one yet this week because today is Wednesday. So, but last week, because I keep all these in my clipboard, let's see how effective I was, because transparency is important. Wow, last week I talked to 7 pre-approvals. That's pretty pathetic, okay? So, especially because I have 180 of them, all right? So I called 7. Last Thursday, past clients, I didn't do that bad. I called 9, okay? Instead of 12, I called 9. And then Fridays are VIPs. These are just favorite people in your life. And my filter for the VIP list is people that I really like, people that I want to hang around with in person. I want to be around them, and people that have either had a big impact on my life or I want to help them and have a big impact on their life. So it has very little to do with business. Although if you look at my VIP list, I've done business with over 50% of the people on my VIP list because it naturally happens, right? But that's more of just a friendly call for people that you like, care about, want to be in a deeper relationship with. Now, you might be sitting there, whether it's you, Dan, or anyone who is watching this and thinking like, dude, Jeremy kind of sucks. Like his metrics are like, that's kind of pathetic. Like I do more than that. Once again, that's old Jeremy. I would have said the same thing if I heard someone give these, oh, he called 7 people. Like, really? But here's the thing. When you do the greatness tracker every single week over and over and over and over again, the whole point of it is to create a massive amount of appointments, to get a massive amount of leads, to get a massive amount of deals. So the reality is that I used to have way better results on my lead tracker because I had more time, you guys.
Yeah.
I had more time. Let's look at my week this week. Okay. I'm just looking at it right here. So this week already, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 appointments, and it's Wednesday at 9:41 a.m. Do I have enough time to call all the people I'm supposed to call? I don't. That's just a reality, right? I have to figure out how to fit in as many as I can, though, and I have to figure out hacks, but you don't want to figure out hacks until you're that full. So even though it sounds like maybe my effort is weak, I just shared with you guys, like I haven't had a second in 2 days to do anything except for give great advice, add value to my realtor partners and my clients that I'm meeting with, and do deals, right? So you're not, there's seasons, as I said at the beginning of this, there's going to be seasons where you're slower and you're going to be able to smoke the greatness tracker if you're focused on it. There's going to be seasons where you're so busy that it's going to be really, really, really difficult to fill out all the items. Like my appointments, no problem, man. I'm already there this week, right? Like I crushed it. Yeah. Like I just had people coming in half-hour intervals, 15-minute interval calls on some of these things. But my phone call, 60 plus conversations, I don't think I'm going to hit it this week. I'm going to have to do a really, really big effort to see if I can do it, but it doesn't matter because you're just trying to close the gaps in the different areas at different times.
Well, there was a couple of questions around, like, so what is the idea around the greatness tracker from a income, from a closing standpoint? So you pretty much just answered that. So, and I'll add one more piece of commentary around that, but I wanted to take a moment. This is a good time for the listeners to understand. I didn't open the call because I didn't want this to be hey, I closed X number of deals. But just real quick, share what your 2019 production was. Share what your year to date, January, February looks like for the listeners.
Sure. So in 2019, my personal production, and let's define that real quick. And I'm not knocking any model, just so you know. I just think it's important to know there's lots of different models and they can all be successful. So my model, when I say personal production, is my production. I am the loan officer, and they're my referrals, they're my loans that I closed personally. Okay. And then I have branch and stuff like that outside of that. So my personal production last year was 299 loans for 129 million. My goal this year is one more, 300 loans. Let's try to get to 300 this year. Okay. So tracking so far in 2020, I had an excellent month, right under 13 million. In January, February, I'm going to close just a hair under, like 30,000, under 10 million in January. March, I'm projecting around $18 million in closed transactions, about 40 units. Okay. So it's off to an excellent start. Now, that's not all because of me. It's 50% of the market, but that's 50% of my activities. That's another thing, Dan, that I think is important for everyone to hear. If you're listening to this right now, you need to get after it. You need to sacrifice sleep short term. Okay. You need to really pick up your phone skills, hunting, asking everyone you can help them, because we have a gigantic opportunity to potentially double our business from what we did last year right now. Yeah. And that's because of the market, not because of us. So let's take these things we're learning, create massive action and activity, because the market is the wind is at our backs right now. We can run fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a perfect way to end the call. We wanted to keep it around 30 to 40 minutes, and we're right there. So what I'm going to do, I have everyone's email, I have everyone's information. I'm going to email you the forms. We'll send you out the daily theme tracker. We'll send you the greatness tracker. And then any questions that I see come through, I'll just put them in the email and just say, hey, Q, bold it black, and then answer it down below. So I may shoot you some info after the call journey there. But one last question that I want, there's some confusion around this every once in a while. A lot of people in 2020 like to text. If you have a good text conversation, will that count as a good conversation or call?
Oh, man. I mean, I don't count that. I don't want to say they don't count, you guys, because I text. Okay. So I'm going to answer this in a gray area way. And I apologize for that because I'm so black and white. Yeah. So for me, if I've called them and they text me back for that, I count that. Okay. Just texting, I don't count, because I'd have like 500 million of them. Yeah. Because then you're double count. What you're going to, and the reason I do it that way is I don't want to double count the same person, because I text them, they text me back, and then I text them something else, and they text like that's not two conversations. Like that's, so some of my hacks real quick to end on this note is that when someone texts me and I'm available, I did it with Dan this morning, actually. Yeah. This is true. So Dan texts me, right? But I asked him a question, he texted me back, and I was kind of like, you know what? I have another question. I just called him. I just literally pressed the button and I called Dan. Yeah. So I do that a lot with people. If people are texting me, I'll just call them, because if I'm available to text, 70% of the time I'm available to make a phone call as well. It's there are rare times where you're in a meeting, you're at God forbid, you're at a kid's like play and you're bored and you're waiting and you're kind of checking your phone. Those are times where you text back where it's inappropriate to call, but I hope I answered that correctly. Don't count just text conversations as great calls. Make an effort to call them back, or make an effort to call them, and if they respond, count that as a conversation.
I love that. So I wrote down, if you call them and they text you back and that's how they want the conversation, and you can either call them back, or that's the gray area that we're moving in. There's a couple of really good questions on tips on improving closing skills. I think that's a totally separate call, to be honest.
Yeah, let's do another call.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll put that in the comments as well. Dude, thanks so much for your time. I know how you got a lot of people asking for your time, and you're so generous with that. And I appreciate the influence you had in my business and my life. And I know a lot of people on this call they're gonna say the same thing. So thanks a lot, man. We appreciate you. I'll get this video out to everyone. This guy is super successful too. So if you have questions, reach out to Jeremy or myself. Okay.
Yep. If anyone needs any help, let us know. Let's schedule a 5-minute conversation. We're happy to help you. We're happy to hold you accountable. I do it for all kinds of people across the nation. I have so many people contact me and say, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. And then they're shocked that I call them back. It's like, no, I wouldn't be putting this out there unless I want to help you. We have an opportunity to make our industry better and to make each other better, and only good things come of that. So Dan, thanks for having me. Everyone, thanks for listening. Hit us up if you have any questions, and we'll see you on another one of these real soon.
All right, you guys. Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you all for coming on board.
Take care. All right, recording is stopped.
Okay. Do you want to stop cloud recording? Yes.